the invented world which I've created, which, like I said, was a pseudo-Victorian one. So all the technologies and things and that kind of stuff is based on the kind of 18th-19th century elements of, but in a very fantastical setting. So you've got things like airships as a mode of transport, you've got canals as a mode of transport, but then you also have things like the English stroke kingdom. Their allies are called the Steeman Free State, and they're a bunch of sentient artificial beings, almost robots. And the kind of the backstory to the book is that it's set millions and millions and millions of years in the future, and societies had various disasters and ice ages, and they've kind of gone back to a steam technology when the book opens, but they're kind of treading over the debris of previous civilizations. But it's so far in the future that there's no real kind of connection, if you like, or very tenuous connections to the kind of society that you see today. I think I managed to slip one reference in the second novel, which was there was a kind of a lost city underneath the ocean that's called Lost Angels, and that's obviously a play on Los Angeles. And a lot of fans picked up on that and said, oh, you've actually set this millions of years in the future then. Because a lot of people just thought it was a kind of an alternative reality, if you like, skewed from our own 18th century. But I was really just having fun there.
Okay. We were talking about steampunk, but maybe there's people here who never read anything with steampunk or steampunk characteristics. What is exactly steampunk?
Well, I would define the sort of pure breed steampunk really as, I mean, the exemplar of the genre would be something like the graphic novel stroke film League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where you basically have a Victorian society, but it has these kind of strange technologies that didn't exist. It's a kind of blend of science fiction and the Victorian art form, if you like. And you'll have, in the case of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, you have all these kind of characters from the books of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells who are making guest appearances either as stars or as walk-on characters. So you've got the Invisible Man working with Jekyll and Hyde, and Captain Nemo almost as a sort of band of superheroes or anti-superheroes. And a lot of the books that are out there now, which are pure breed steampunk, are set in that kind of society. There are some where they have the idea that the technology of the Martians in H.G. Wells was appropriated when they all died, and that technology was then sort of incorporated into a human super science which allowed society to veer off in different directions. I mean, if you look at some of the earlier forms of the genre, Michael Moorcock, in, say, Nomads of the Time Stream, one of his novels, he did a very kind of steampunky universe, but that was based all around the premise that you had this kind of mad scientist who was born in that particular world, who wasn't born in ours, who introduced all these mad inventions and had, you know, atomic power long before atomic power existed, and that kind of thing. So.
Okay. So we have here fantasy.
I would say, yeah. If I had to do what, if you ever get SFX magazine, when they do their reviews, they sometimes do books as percentages, and I would say mine's probably like 80% fantasy, 10% science fiction, 10% steampunk.
Okay. After the Court of the Year, you wrote at least 3-4 more?
Well, I've got 6 in the series, and we're actually on number 4 now in the UK, in hardback anyway. And they've got number 5 coming out this year, towards the end, and number 6 early next year. Although they're all set in the same universe, they are actually standalone novels, and that was a deliberate direction for myself, in as much as when I started writing this, one of the reasons for writing a Victorian fantasy novel was I myself, as a reader, had been fairly disillusioned with the kind of standard epic fantasy, elves, dwarves, medieval background type worlds that had been coming out, mainly from America, I guess, which is what I was reading from, you know, imports from the Forbidden Planet. It's what I jokingly used to call to my science fiction friends the furry pants school of fantasy, because, you know, everybody wears those kind of furry pants that you see with the barbarians on the cover. And I wanted to sort of get away from that, and I also didn't want particularly to do the kind of Wheel of Time type saga where, you know, you do book 1, then book 2, then book 3, and it becomes a bit of a soap opera, and you have to really have read them all in order, and by the time you've got to book 5, you've probably forgotten about what happened in book 1 anyway. So what I thought was, well, actually structurally, I'd much rather be closer to somebody like Terry Pratchett and his Discworld saga, where you have the books set in the same universe, but they, they have different characters and self-contained adventures. And I guess on a non-science fiction front, I also was quite a big admirer of the Bernard Cornwell Sharp series of novels, which are sort of Napoleonic War books. But again, they are the same characters, obviously in the same setting in the Napoleonic Wars, but they kind of move through time, having little self-contained adventures. And you can pick up book 1 and read it, or you can pick up book 15 and read it in the series, and you don't have to have read book 1 to understand book 15. And that's kind of where I wanted to go with my books. So, yeah, we've got 6 in the series now. The Court of the Air is the first one. You've got The Kingdom Beyond the Waves is the second one. That was more of a kind of an Indiana Jones style adventure, whereas this is probably closer to a quest book. The third book was Rise of the Iron Moon. That was more of a kind of invasion story along the lines of H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds. The fourth book was Secrets of the Fire Sea, and that's more of a murder mystery set on this strange little island where electricity still actually works, whereas in the rest of the world, electricity, basically the voltage scheme as far as particle physics is concerned, has basically been skewed by a kind of evolutionary drift in the universe. So it's one of the reasons why they use steam power rather than sort of higher forms of energy. And that was, like I say, a murder mystery and quite dark, a bit like, it's in The Name of the Rose, the book, or the movie. Yeah. And the sixth one that's coming out is called Jack Cloudy, and that's more of a straight war story, actually set between the sort of the English-style kingdom and their immediate neighbours to the south, which is called Cassarabia, and they're a kind of Arab-type state based in these desert lands. So there's a big sort of aerial conflict between the two, a sort of war of airships. And I was really there influenced a lot by the sort of the Napoleonic Navy, master and commander type novels and films, but obviously with airships as the kind of the main floating war platform rather than nautical ships. And the sixth one, which I'm currently working on, is more of a spy story, based on all my own sort of favourite spy stories of the Cold War in the 1950s, but translated perhaps into the kind of milieu of Victorian society in my fantasy world.
So you are using the setting to write different genres?
In a way, yes. I mean, I think they all have a sort of degree of, apart from perhaps this one, this is, like I say, more of a straight sort of quest adventure. But the others, I mean, I think as a writer you can get very bored if you have to write the same thing over and over again. And I think the strength of a fantasy or a science fiction setting is it gives you the ability to set almost any style of story. You can have romance, a la Twilight, you can have war stories, you can have adventures, quests, and the fantasy setting just allows you to have a lot more fun, I think, than if you were stuck doing Mills and Boon romance novels or just straight crime thrillers like Ian Rankin.
And Court of the Reef, we were